Okay, it looks like we're good to go. I'm recording now. I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you guys for showing up. We're so excited to have Becky here. We're going to have our interview and live podcast in a minute. I just want to let you all know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns to use the raise hand feature, and then I'll unmute you. And if everyone can keep their mics on mute while people are speaking, that would be great to cut down the background noise. And I guess we have a good amount of people in here. I think we're good to start.
Okay, so for everybody who has not recorded a podcast before, it will be edited. So if you are being interviewed, you know who you are if you're being interviewed. If you screw up, you can start over if you need to. Obviously, try to make it as natural as possible. Yeah, so while I'm speaking, again, if everybody can remain muted until I start the interviews, we're going to introduce each of the people being interviewed one at a time, but then we're going to answer the actual interview questions as a group. Oh, looks like we have Marcus is logging on now. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Welcome everybody to a very special episode of Growing Through Grad School. This is your co-host, Becky. Christian is not with us today. He is actually downstairs right now hosting a teletherapy session from his bedroom. I have not been doing any clinical work, and you'll probably hear a little bit more about what I've been up to when we get to our interviews later. It is May 14th, which means that we are 2 months into quarantine. So students have been sent home from school. Classes are now virtual. So for some of us, the semester just ended. I did not have any classes this semester, but I was teaching a lab. Other than that, there's just research, lots of research going on. So for a lot of us, our focus is now really figuring out how do we adjust all of our goals and expectations to help us navigate learning in isolation. So we've been bombarded, I think, on social media, in the news, everywhere you go with all sorts of advice for how to, manage and quarantine, what to do during a global pandemic. But today I really want to focus on something that I haven't seen as much of, which is how to be a grad student in quarantine. So to facilitate So to facilitate this discussion, we brought in the Graduate School Council from Howard University. So we have a huge handful of students who are live on Zoom with us right now. And I want to give a massive thank you to our friend Troy and Chioma for helping organize this event today. We're actually going to speak to Troy in a little bit, so hold on tight for that. So what are we talking about today? We're going to take a deep dive into our feelings. That sounds like a TV therapist when I say that. We're going to talk about emotions because that's a big issue that I found around writing and research in general, but especially in quarantine. We're going to talk with a few graduate students about their overall experience during quarantine so far and some advice that they have. Basically, my hope is that overall we can just facilitate a discussion about what it's like to be a graduate student right now. And hopefully you all can find a little bit of comfort or motivation in this. So before we start with our interviews, I just want to talk a little bit about our topic of processing emotions during quarantine as a graduate student. I guess I have a whole bunch of sort of reflective questions for everybody, not only the people in the meeting, but the listeners today to sort of think about in their process of basically working through the next few months in quarantine and not having access to the resources that we usually have access to. So how do we effectively process the emotional experience of being a student during a pandemic? We all work a lot and we work alone a lot, but being stuck in one place and being expected to continue putting out quality work could feel almost impossible in quarantine. I think we can probably all agree that usually it feels impossible to really move forward with a massive research project. And now we have all of these new barriers. So I want to discuss that a little bit and what some different students are doing to manage all of that. So let's see. It can be really helpful, I think, to step back and focus on identifying and managing new emotions that are arising during this time related to your work. So again, that was work that was already really hard and taxing to begin with. And now we have to figure out, how do we respond to those emotions? Are we going to hold ourselves to the same expectations as we had before, or are we going to shift those in some way? So academia obviously expects productivity from us all the time, and we usually don't have many immediate benefits for that. You know, when you're working on a thesis or a dissertation, it takes a long time to see, you know, the outcome of passing your proposal or getting that degree. So how do we define productivity differently now that we're in quarantine? We don't have the same expectations as we did before. Is it more about balancing our energy and our mood than producing consistent good work? How do we work with the ebb and flow of our energy and moods during quarantine? Another thing that's come up a lot in speaking with other graduate students is, how do we grieve the things that we no longer get to do or have access to as students now that we're all separate and we're home alone? How do we reconnect with our passion, not only for things in the normal world, but also for our research passions? Yeah, so here are a few of the students who are going to join us and answer some questions for us today. We have Troy.
Hey, I don't know if I can talk, but
Hi,
hey y'all, I'm Troy.
welcome. Thank you again for helping coordinate this
And
episode.
thank you so much for allowing us to use you and your expertise in podcast making for this event.
So Troy, why don't you give us a little brief introduction about yourself so we know who you are?
Um, well, my name is Troy, obviously. I am a graduate student at Howard University. Um, I'm a first year PhD student in the Department of Psychology with a specialization in social psychology. And I'm also the Secretary of the Grad Student Council. Um,
Can you say
I
that
don't
again?
know.
You cut out.
Hmm?
Can you say that part again? You cut out.
Oh, which part?
The secretary.
Oh, yeah, and I'm in addition to the program I'm in currently, I'm also holding the position as Secretary for the Graduate Student Council for the 2019-2020 academic year.
What do you do in that position?
Oh, there's a lot that a secretary does in this position. A lot of it involves sending or communicating, documenting, especially documenting a lot of information, but also working with the students and also the administration as far as like communicating and stuff, making sure that everybody is getting everything they need. I also operate the group me. Well, I also co-operate the group me that we have, making sure like the events and stuff are being spread out, the flyers and stuff are being spread out. And yeah, just making sure that all the students are in the loop.
Wonderful. I can imagine that's a very important role right now, too.
Yes, it is a very important role. So, woo, but we're making it work. We're making it work.
What have you been working on in quarantine?
So we got into quarantine in March, I think the beginning of March. So with that being said, there was still school and work and research. So yeah, since quarantine, I have been doing like a lot of work with my coursework, my course load. I'm working on the papers and stuff like that. And then also adjusting to moving from instructing in person to online
Mm-hmm.
as a teaching assistant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a big deal because not only do I have to work on my own caseload, but I also have to make sure that all the other students that I'm working for are also getting their caseload together and making sure that they're adjusting as well, which can be a little bit taxing for me. Um,
Yeah, so you're managing not only your own needs and workload, but trying to also help other students
yes,
manage, you know, taking a class and shifting
yeah.
to a different format.
Yes, and a lot of these students have a lot of issues, and so there has been some people who have reached out to me about some issues that they were having and stuff like that, and talking about grades and adjusting grades and all that. So you know, of course, that's expected, but because this is new for not just them but also me, it was a lot of like communication with the primary instructor for the class and all that stuff, and even like the administration too. Um,
Yeah.
And then research-wise, because there was supposed to be research productivity this semester with my own advisor, primarily we use like a lot of stuff inside, I mean, on the campus. There has been like a strong movement from on campus to how to operate research virtually, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been some changes with that too. But thankfully, he's been very accommodating for that because, of course, this is outside of our control. Circumstances. So that, I guess, trying to learn about self-care,
I don't know what's happening with the sound.
Hello? Oh. Hello?
Yep, is it back?
I don't know. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, yeah.
I was just going to just end off just saying that since being quarantined, though, self-care is a big deal. And I've been learning every day how to process my emotions and how to kind of use that energy for more productive activities instead of like activities or work that's like not good for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so I'm gonna introduce a few more people who are going to be interviewed today, and then I kind of want to start a discussion as a whole about some of those things that you were just mentioning, Troy. Arsh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Arsh. I am also a student at Howard University. I'm a fifth year in the clinical psych program. Yeah.
Arsh, what have you been working on? What have you been working on in quarantine?
So I have been adjusting to doing a lot of clinical work and then really having no clinical work and no structure. So primarily, I've just been working on my dissertation, which has been kind of a challenge.
Where are you at with your dissertation?
So I am lucky in the fact that, you know, my data has all been collected. So I'm just working on my results and discussion piece. But it's still been challenging just adjusting to having a lot of structure, having my days planned out to, you know, going to all this time to work on my dissertation and kind of having to structure myself and, you know, just dealing with all the feelings that come up with these changes and the pandemic. Yeah.
And what I find interesting is that you are sort of at the end of your program and Troy is at the beginning of the program. And as we'll probably talk about in a minute, the three of us have been part of a research lab, a virtual research lab together that's been just led by students. And we've all sort of come together in that we're having a lot of the same experiences despite being at completely different points in our research right now. And then we have Marcus. Marcus is our non-psych student. Marcus, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you for having me today. I'm Marcus. I am a first year PhD student in health behavior and health education at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I do work around the relationships between neighborhood, built, and social environmental context on obesity and cardiovascular disease among urban minority populations.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today, all the way
Thank you
from
for
Michigan.
having me. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. What have you been working on in quarantine?
Finishing up the second half of the semester, I've been doing research on air pollution and the disproportionate burden of pollutants in the Detroit metropolitan area. I've been doing a lot of work around that, in addition to finishing up several manuscripts as well.
All right, so you have a lot going on there.
Yes.
Our guest Arsh is from Michigan, so I just wanted to make that little connection between the two of you.
Hey.
Hey.
All right, so I guess the next question that I have for all of you is, have your feelings around your academic work changed since quarantine started, and how has it changed?
So I can speak on this a little bit. So I, you know, in graduate school, we always feel this pressure to perform. But I feel like it's kind of gone up for me because I've had like several supervisors kind of make comments like, well, you're in quarantine, so you're home a lot. So, you have a lot of time to work on your dissertation. And while that might be true, it's just also, dealing with all these other things. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that's being taken into account. And there's this extra expectation, well, you have more time now, so you should be performing at an even higher rate. But really what I'm worried about is not burning out.
Yeah, that brings me back to the question that I posed earlier about how do we define productivity differently now? And is it more important to look at balancing your mood and your energy levels and really trying to work with the ebb and flow of that versus expecting that you're going to put out really quality work every day because you have nowhere to go and nothing else to do? And I think on this podcast in the past, we've talked about the pressure that comes from, academia in general and our advisors and our teachers to constantly be putting out good work. Everyone's always saying, try to write every single day. And while I do think that's really helpful, I tried that strategy this summer and it was really helpful. At the same time, it doesn't really account for the emotional struggle that comes along with doing research. It doesn't account for the anxiety and stress that we're feeling because the whole world is in chaos right now.
Mhm. I think that for me, I guess as a type A personality and someone who is always used to staying busy or trying to occupy myself, I am learning how to balance that and to be patient with myself during this time. As a public health student, this is literally what we're learning in our epidemiology class that we're taking in our initial coursework. So it's like, we're living out the textbook examples of, just seeing how this disease is unfolding, and it can be overwhelming to navigate this time, and when you know that there's a lot more going into the way that the virus is unfolding. So I think that it's a piece that I've learned is to be patient with myself and to give myself time to unplug, limiting my social media and just general media exposure, to just not consume myself. I know what my limits are, and respecting that boundary for myself and my own mental and physical well-being. And I think that that's an important piece that I have learned during this time, in addition to trying to stay physically active through doing, at-home exercising and trying to get out of the house to get fresh air and go on walks as best as I can, assuming that nobody else is outside doing the same thing. But, trying to give myself space to deal with everything that is going on with our current situation.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of new routines that have been established in your space to create a new flow day to day and help you feel like you're in some sort of a balanced environment.
Right.
Yeah, I think that can be very challenging when you're stuck in the same space or around the same people over and over again. For me personally, spending time socially with my friends used to be a really good way to unwind. And, we do have video chat, we have Zoom, we have Google Hangouts, but it's really not the same. So finding ways to kind of fill in those spaces that used to be calming and regulating for me, and, trying out some new things to see what does and doesn't work for me in the new situation that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna just keep mine brief because I feel like a lot of what was said already from Arsh and Marcus was basically how I feel. But I'll just add that being unmotivated, or I feel like my motivation to succeed has definitely diminished significantly ever since the quarantine, because I'm not just worried about, because like my main concern is no longer I gotta do good in school. I gotta do this academically, but it's more so, am I going to survive? Am I going to, how's my family going to do and stuff like that? So because of my constant worrying and my constant anxiety about myself, my own health, and my friends and family, it kind of just taken over my own personal interests and my personal drive to do well academically in school.
So Troy, I'm curious, is there anything that you're doing about that? Are you just letting that happen, which is, I think, a totally acceptable thing right now? Are you trying to work with that in some way?
Honestly, up until this week, I've just been letting it happen, and because I didn't really have the answers to make up for all this stress I'm dealing with. But I realized it was an issue last week, and so I was like, all right. So this week I decided to do something different. I enjoy dancing to get my energy out and stuff like that. So I do that a lot. Or I'll just make my time to go outside much more. I'll go outside more often than I usually would before, just so that way I get like fresh air and stuff like that. And um, I found that because I was like down a lot, I didn't really want to talk to like a lot of people,
Yeah.
or like I'm not on the phone like that. But I'm forcing myself to talk to people, to interact myself with more of my friends and stuff, because I need that interaction with people to kind of keep my energy flowing and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I had a day recently where I was very, very tired. I'd slept a lot the night before and I just wanted to nap so badly. And I sort of like stepped back and looked at that situation and said, you know what, today is not a day for that. So I put on some good music, I cleaned, I got dressed, and kind of turned that day around. You know, other times I have days like Monday where I just decided, you know what, I'm tired. I'm just going to rest today. And I think that's been helpful. I went into Monday expecting it to be a work day and I didn't get any work done. I think I've learned through the 5 years that I've been in my PhD program, that even though you are really expecting some days to be very productive, you might wake up and it's just not going to happen that day. And I found that is even more important to consider during this quarantine situation. And then I've had days that have been 6 hours of writing, solid 6 hours. So it's kind of hit or miss some days, but with this virtual research lab that we've been doing, I think has been really helpful. So that's essentially just a group of, I think there's 5 of us, and we meet for about 45 minutes or so, 2 days a week. And we all come together. We tell each other what we've been working on in the past few days since we last spoke, what our goals are, what some of the barriers have been. And Troy in particular, I was just thinking about this because you recently did tell us that you were really struggling with the motivation. And I think that's been very helpful for all of us to have those conversations, not only focused on the work that we're doing and the barriers that are coming up in our research, but also the emotional barriers that are coming up and some of the other things that we're all working through right now as well. So the next question that I have for all of you is, what have you learned about your needs during this time?
I'll go. I'll go. The needs that I've had, or what I've learned about my own needs, is that I need interaction. Like I need to be around people. Because if I'm not around people, I will crash. And so that's probably one of the major things I've actually learned about myself. I guess I
Oh,
knew
you're
I
cutting
was
out
like
again.
that. I'm cutting out. Okay, hold on. Hello?
Yep.
We're back on track.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Um, I was just saying that basically, I found out during this situation how much I actually do need to be around people, because beforehand, I was like that, but now that we're forced to this type of situation, I have to be around people. I don't know.
Okay, it cut out again, but we may have to come back to it in a minute. Arsh and Marcus, have you learned anything about your needs, whether it's just your needs as a student, your needs as a researcher, as a person during this time?
I think personally for me, like I mentioned, I really, really value structure. So learning how to kind of create that structure for myself, but also I didn't realize like how some of my academic work is really like tied to social aspects. Like for example, Becky and I are pretty close friends, and a lot of time we'll work on things together, and that was really reinforcing and really helped me, especially when I was lacking motivation. So although we can't physically do that, like she mentioned, that lab is really helping in that aspect to give that space of, okay, we're going to work from this time to this time, even though it's over a Zoom call, and just also being able to discuss those like struggles that you're having, when you're like maybe an hour in and, you're struggling with continuing. And yeah, and also like in terms of like just structure in my house, like how do I designate certain areas, like this is my work area and this is my relaxation area, because I was kind of struggling with that at first. Like I don't want to be sitting on the couch doing my work and watching TV, because then it kind of just all blends together, and I'm kind of in this limbo. Am I working? Am I relaxing now? So those are the things I've kind of learned about myself.
Yeah, I think creating those separate workspaces is very helpful, but it can also be really challenging because many of us are in small spaces or are trying to navigate working in a home that has other people in it. So I know, Arsh, for example, you and your fiance live in a studio apartment, so there's not a lot of separation between the two of you. I have some private space, but when I want to work downstairs, I have to put on noise canceling headphones and sit in a certain area so that I'm not interrupted by other people that are using that space, which I think is something that has been a challenge for me as well, especially as somebody with ADHD, trying to figure out how do I, adjust my environment to work with my executive functioning needs instead of against them.
Right. And I'll just quickly add, I think that, I guess to echo the sentiments earlier about just the need for human interaction. I am a very strong introvert, but even as an introvert, I do enjoy interacting with other people. So I think that is something that I've learned about myself. And then additionally, just creating structure and creating my own personal variety through, this time now that we're finished with the semester. How do I distinguish one day from the next? Because it seems as though most days are running into each other, and, not much variety between each day. So I'm just trying to create some form of structure and some sort of variety to keep myself grounded and sane.
Yeah, I think that piece about creating structure has been one of my biggest challenges, and I've definitely improved with it. So for example, this research lab, we meet on Monday and Wednesday morning. So those are my most dedicated writing days, where I run our lab group and then go down, have some breakfast, and start working at that around 30 minutes later, and work until I hit a certain point, and then I can have access to, the things that I find relaxing and enjoyable. So for me, on the days where I really have energy, like I said, this past Monday was one of those lab days, but I knew I just didn't have the energy to work. So it didn't happen that day, but creating some of these other spaces in my home that I can also go to during those work times. So working on my balcony or working on my table downstairs, that's separate from, sitting on the couch in my bedroom, where I have worked a lot here as well, but I'm finding it just doesn't flow as easily, and I'm more distracted when I'm here. So I'm just curious if anyone else has any strategies for sort of structuring their days right now.
Hey everyone. So for me, I would normally like plan the day before, like map out the day, the following day, like a time schedule, and I work around that, and I try my best to stick to it, but make sure that there's a balance between academics and social as well as nature, because I'm a nature person, and that's what I guess keeps me in check, so to speak, so I don't get overwhelmed with just being in the house 24/7.
Yes, I'm definitely a nature person too. I understand that. And with the weather slowly improving, I think that's been helping me. Definitely
Yes.
helping me.
So it's not that gloomy and oh, it's cold. You have to stay inside. Can
Yeah.
go out in the backyard and just sit and listen to nature stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I know Christian has been, I will speak for what he's been up to. I know he's been going on walks and runs around Lake Artemisia by our home and really trying to get outside and take some breaks out there as well, which I think is really important. I have not done enough of that, but I think some of the parks in Maryland have opened up again. So my hope is that now that we have less rain and more sunshine, I can get out and get some more movement and some time in nature as well. Does anyone else have any strategies that they've been using for structuring their day? Okay, so I'm going to pull on a few more last questions before we close out the episode. How are you all relying on community to help you through your graduate work in quarantine?
I think for me, my the ways in which I rely and engage with my community while in quarantine really has not changed because I'm from DC and my family and community is based in DC, and now that I'm in Michigan, it's still kind of the same as far as connecting via FaceTime or telephone or things like that. So mine has kind of been pretty much the same with just touching base with people and making sure that everything is well on both ends. It's really kind of just been a continuation of what has already been happening for me.
Okay, wonderful.
Well, for me, being international, it's somewhat different. I have to, well, most times I call home to check in on family and friends. Since can't physically be there, and then I would check in like with my mom because she'd be asking, "How is your daily progress? With classwork and stuff. How is it going? You need any help? Need me to read over a document or something for you to help the process go a bit smoother?" Because normally I would have my friend or one of my sisters read over the document, but now since everybody else is out of touch with everything, it's kind of different because everybody's now home trying to mitigate everything that's happening. So you don't want to pressure or burn out one source. So that's what I
A
do.
lot of the people who typically offer support are all focused on their own needs right now, which I think is very reasonable, but it also makes it challenging for you to sort of move forward with some of the work that you have to do if you don't have the same support as before. Anyone else have any suggestions?
I'm logging in. I'm on my phone now. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Okay. So community. So just like Marcus said, like a lot of my family and friends are definitely local. There's nobody that's far, so that's a big advantage. But I will say that in addition to what I've said as far as like interacting, we have my family within the house has bonded a little bit more. We're doing puzzles, we're playing games, we're pulling out old pictures and putting like little scrapbooks together. And sometimes that's like a good escape for, I mean, I'm enjoying this little escape by doing those activities from the outside world. I'm kind of like just staying in the moment and keeping myself within the house and not worrying about what's going on the news, what's going on outside our door, who's sick and stuff like that. But that's it.
Yeah, I think that gives you ability to sort of reconnect with people in a different way as well. Arch, do you have any strategies or suggestions for how you can pull from community and rely on them to support you right now?
So yeah, like my family is mostly in Michigan, so I would say my kind of how I've engaged my community is kind of the same as before, but mostly it's been, you know, just reaching out and, you know, asking, you know, them how they're doing and kind of, you know, having that reciprocal conversation. But I will say I feel like I've been in touch more, just because, you know, Michigan was one of the hot spots. So just that, you know, dealing with that anxiety of like, is my family okay? And, you know, just checking in with them. I would say I'm definitely engaging more with my community here in DC with my friends, even though it's just virtually. It really has been, you know, helpful, whether it be social or academic, just, you know, knowing that they're there for me, and also kind of that little grieving process since I'm going to be moving and not being able to spend time with them. You know, it's been good to at least be virtually in touch.
Yeah, and Arsh and I are in the same PhD cohort. One of our cohort members, Max, who we've talked about on this podcast before, I don't know why we talk about Max so much, but he defended his dissertation recently, which was really exciting. So we, you know, a lot of the people in our cohort tuned in to see his defense because he did it virtually. And then we held a party for him afterwards, and we played games together and just hung out and chatted, which was really nice because, you know, a lot of us are sort of separating, going on to different stages of our program. Several of us are moving away. And this is, you know, this was sort of the last opportunity for us all to be in the same area again. So again, going back to that piece about grieving and just letting go of the fact that we aren't going to have that time physically together anymore, but that we can all always video chat each other, call each other, and we will always do that. And then I've been connecting a lot with my friends in Philadelphia. We've been video chatting several times a week. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen that we've been doing slideshows a couple times a week where we all create just goofy slideshow topics about whatever, you know, anything. I made one about my favorite band, one about my favorite candies. So just really goofy things. And then we all join a video chat and share our screens and present them together. And that honestly has been so wonderful because we just laughed so hard during that time. And that laughter has been really healing, I think, to help manage the stress of being alone and not being able to actually physically be with friends, and also the stress of trying to work through research and kind of being at a pivotal point with my research in isolation. I'm also doing a virtual wine tasting coming up this weekend, which I'm really excited for. So several of my friends and I all have wine, and we have somebody who's going to tell us all about them as we try them together. So I guess one of my hopes for everybody who's listening is that you can come together with your friends in some way to create some sort of accountability process, whether it's doing the video chats or starting a text chat where everybody's saying, okay, let's check in at this time with our goals, say what we're going to work on, but then also including some of those self-care pieces into that, and including some of the conversation about the emotional barriers and the challenges that you all are having too. So it's not just focused on being productive and getting work done, because if we just talk about that, then people are afraid to mention the fact that they're also struggling and that they're not getting things done. So I think it's important to find a balance between those two areas of discussion. All right, let's see what time we have. Okay, we have a few minutes left. Let me see if I can find one more question on my list here. Okay, my last question for everybody is, how are you sort of reconnecting with your passions during this time? So whether that passion has to do with your research and your academic pursuits, which I think is important to kind of maintain that motivation right now, and also just your passions outside of school, because obviously feeding those is also going to really help you feel more prepared to work on your schoolwork.
Um, I speak for the fact that I like writing and reading. So now, since it's kind of slow at school, I have the time now to read more and to write more stuff and design more stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah, same. Same. Oh wait, hello. Okay, same thing with me. Like I mentioned earlier, that I've been dancing. I started doing dance. That started dancing again this week, and dancing is one of my passions since forever. So I've been doing that a lot and exercising, and I'm like, okay, that's fun. It's great. Woo! And then I recently got a book from Amazon a couple of days ago, and I've really been like diving myself into reading again. Reading has been something that I kind of left behind since school got real. So
I think a lot of people have.
so I'm happy to, one advantage I'll say out of this is that kind of like having a lot of time on my hands can allow me to do more things that can take my mind off of the bad stuff. So thank goodness all those different things that I enjoyed doing has been coming up in my life once more, and has been more beneficial for my emotions and my mental health more so than ever. So.
For me, it's really doing a lot of things that I haven't been able to tap into since school started. Similar to what Troy said, I guess the concept of reading for fun since being in a doctoral program has definitely decreased. So, reconnecting and getting back into reading. I'm also really big on baking, so baking a lot more now. Learning new things. I taught myself how to sew, just because of of making masks and learning how to do those types of things, and learning Photoshop and some of the other Adobe packages that they offer. So just trying to explore and get more creative and use this time to just explore.
Wonderful. I love it. Regine, did you have something to say?
Oh, hi. Yeah. So I'm Regine. I was just kind of listening in, but I'm also a quick bit. I'm also a graduate student at Howard University. I'm in my first year, or just finishing my first year as an occupational therapy student. So answering the question, like Troy mentioned, school has been real. And one thing that I found myself getting back into is actually getting back into YouTube and filming. I have a YouTube channel, That Girl Ray, REI. So being that we've been home and had all this time in the house, it's perfect for me to kind of like get back into my creative, niche and make lists of video ideas. And like, I've even gotten my boyfriend into filming with me. So it's been very good, and also like a good little stress reliever for me to like focus on something other than everything that's been going on around me. So
yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? All right, so Christian and I usually end our podcast by setting intentions. So anybody who is currently in our video chat who would like to join in, you are all welcome. We'll try to go one by one, of course. So typically what we do is we set 2 intentions. We set an academic one, and then we set a personal one. So my academic intention for the next week is to submit my proposal to the IRB. So I have quite a few steps that I have to get through, and signatures and so on, in the next week before the 22nd, but that is my academic goal. And then my personal goal is just to go hiking a few days in the next week so that I can get out, move my body a little bit, and spend some time somewhere other than my bedroom. Does anybody else have any intentions that they would like to share with us today?
For me, academically, I wish to start reading my textbook for next semester because it's pretty hectic. in that course. And for um, personal goal for the week, I wish to do some more t-shirt designs that I have in mind.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I guess just to end off with.
Hey, Troy.
Hey, girl. I want to just organize. Like, I want to get back into using my daily planner again. Back when the world was normal, I used my planner every single day, and I even met with like my friends sometimes every weekend to organize our planners together. And that kind of like just been all over the place since the pandemic. So I think especially because the summer session is starting up next week, and I'm a TA over the summer too, I really got to get my life organized before more mess ensues. So yeah.
I like that too. I've been doing a lot of, like I said, video chatting and little events via Zoom and Google Hangouts. And I found that it's been extremely hard for me to remember when I'm doing what, because there's no, like, every day is blending. Like Marcus said, it's so hard to differentiate between each day. So I think using my planner would actually be really helpful, even though I'm not going out and doing things. I just can't really, I don't know how long there is until next Wednesday. I don't even remember what day it is half the time. Does anyone else have any intentions for us?
For me, and two intentions. One, academically, although school is over, I want to try to at least continue to review like material that I've learned throughout the year, because with occupational therapy, we do learn a lot of information, and it's very easy for you to forget things. And once you go into your second year, a lot of those things you learn your first year, you do have to, know a little bit of. So that's one goal I have for myself. And then personally, for, like I mentioned, my YouTube, I do want to get back into being more consistent and just continue with planning and, just putting out more content.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go next. I think for academic goals, I want to revisit my timeline for my dissertation, just because some changes have come up. I think that will kind of help me focus in on what I need to do by when. And then for personal, I would like to plan an outdoor activity because I haven't done one in a while. So maybe even if it's just going to like a farmer's market would be nice.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Does anyone else have any intentions for us before we close out our episode?
Hey, this is Natalie. I'm a second year PhD in the School of Social Work, and academic intention I have for this week is to finish my last final. I took an incomplete on it, and I just really want to be done with the semester. Mm-hmm. My personal intention is just, I guess, to just give my body grace. I was like trying to like lose weight during quarantine, and I did some physical activity at home and like had a back spasm, ended up in ER. So it's kind of been crazy. So I just feel like I need to just be patient with myself and allow my body to heal.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder. Thank you for that. Does anyone else want to offer any of their intentions for the week?
Hi, my name is Felipe. I'm now a second year econ PhD at Howard. I'm not sure if y'all could hear me.
Yep, we can.
Perfect. But my academic intention, at least in the short term, is to prepare for my comps and really revisit, kind of echoing, I think someone had mentioned, reviewing everything over the summer, kind of organizing. I think now more than ever is a good time to organize, now that I'm easily distracted, so I'll try to organize anything under the sun. Mm-hmm. So not being in my space all the time can't get me away from it, so I get distracted. But anyway, preparing for comps, organizing things, and for my own personal intention, being more mindful and practicing yoga, and to a certain extent, kind of going back to the 1 hour yoga that we usually do, and I kind of fallen off. So I like to gradually, marginally get back to that hour by starting at 20 minutes. because I can't really go anywhere and it's really killing me. But anyway, that's all I got.
I like the idea of working up to it though, because sometimes the barrier is just doing it in the first place. So if you just get started with something that seems a little bit easier, 20 minutes is not that long. It goes by so quickly when you're doing yoga. I think that will definitely be a good way to work up to doing that hour again and just really being able to enjoy that time.
Oh, I agree.
Do we have any other intentions?
I guess I could go. I guess for my academic goal would be to, just like plenty of people has mentioned already, is to just stick to having a planner, because actually last semester was like the very first time I have ever been consistent with my planner.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this semester was kind of a bit of a disappointment, because as soon as quarantine started, I just literally fell off of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that'll be even more important for me to do, because during the fall will be online for us. I go to Bowie State, by the way.
Okay.
So yeah, they confirmed, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that fall will also be online. So kind of like just to mentally prepare myself for that, because like it was mentioned, I'm more comfortable with, the lecture, the more structure. And so now it's like I have to mentally prepare myself to be able to really manage that and to really develop a schedule for myself, so I'm not losing myself in the process.
Yeah.
And I guess for my personal goal, I definitely want to try and read more. I have like a lot of books that I have like bought and never read. So I want to get onto that, and to just continue to go outside and do different outdoor activities, like go hiking or something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you all for joining us for this very special episode of Growing Through Grad School. It's been really wonderful, and I really appreciate hearing from everyone, and I'm hoping that our listeners can gain something from this as well. You can find us again, like always, on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, all the little places. Thank you for listening. Again, find us on Instagram at Growing Through Grad School. Is that what it's called? I don't know. Christian usually does this part. Yes, it is Growing Through Grad School on Instagram. All right. Thank you all. Take care. Keep resting. Keep working. Yeah, I can't wait to hear how you all are doing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.